This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland right of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. All-Star Weekend is behind us. That means we are entering the home stretch of the NBA season when all of this stuff starts mattering a whole lot more. And we thought, what better way to kick off the home stretch of the season by answering some listener questions. Joining me to do so is my co-host Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, buddy. I'm just glad to have you back. Thank you very much to Jeff Nomina for filling in on the pre-break pod. And obviously, thank you to Sam Merrill for jumping on. If you didn't hear that interview, was on last week's pod. You should absolutely check it out. But it does feel comfy to have you back, buddy.
I was about to say, you did a tremendous job. Big thanks to Nom stepping up. Really enjoyed that podcast. You killed it. The interview with Sam Merrill, I found that to be fascinating. Yeah, you got a lot of interesting stuff in a short period of time, which isn't easy to do. And credit to how comfortable you made him feel. But let's dive in because, mailbag podcasts, I feel like we always end up going very, very long. We have some news to get to before that. The Cavs have signed Pete Nance to a two-way contract. Not a big surprise given how well he's been playing for the Charge this season. Craig Porter Jr. obviously is on a standard NBA contract. Big congratulations to him. But with that, promotion for Craig, it opened up an opportunity for Pete. And you know what? It makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I think it is a little interesting that they didn't go with a guard to replace a guard. Their two ways are now, Amani Bates, who's obviously a 2-3. You got Isaiah Mobley, who's a bit of 4-5, and then Pete Nance, who I think is a pure 5. I don't think there's any 4 in that body.
I would disagree. I think he's a little 4-5-ish.
All right. Well,
just from a height standpoint, and the fact that he's been stretching it out from 3, that just makes me think kind of a more stretchy 4-5. But I get what you're saying from a rim protection standpoint.
Yeah. So, ultimately, I think it's interesting they didn't go with the guard, but the Cavs have so clearly been using the Charge as the developmental system, and it's fine. If I think with Nance, it's much like a lot of these kind of guys that are right on the periphery of making it into the association full time is. The jumper is going to kind of be the bellwether. He doesn't have the freak athleticism that his brother has. But the jumper at times in the G League has looked really, really good. At times it's faltered, So it's kind of one of those things where that is going to be kind of the bellwether. And, it'll be interesting to see if he gets run if the team is, banged up a little bit, missing a couple guys, whether they're resting people down the stretch. But ultimately, nothing to complain about with a G League spot a two-way spot. And I would suspect, much like Isaiah, he's going to spend most of his time with the Charge until their season's done, just because the Cavs are finally healthy, knocking on that wood. And there's just not really going to be an opportunity for him to play anything other than garbage time. But ultimately, happy for him to have gotten a two-way deal. It's obviously cool anytime you see a Nance in a Cavs uniform.
Yeah, and I think in another sense, it makes sense too, because when you're talking about this late in a G League season and an NBA season, you already have, all 30 teams have 3 two-way players. So there's 90 players under two-way contracts. I don't think there's a lot of diamonds in the rough that aren't under team control right now. So when you have the chance to reward the guy that's in-house, I think obviously you go ahead and do so. Two-way contracts, if something else comes up where you need to pivot, it's very easy to do so. But I think he's certainly shown enough and has been playing really well in the G League. So I'm not surprised to see him get this.
Yeah, and to your point about, you're probably going to need to find someone under team control. I think it's also, these are kind of those fringe moves that in isolation don't really matter much, but when you are a guy that is in that, UDFA kind of fringe kind of spot, you kind of survey the landscape and you look at like, okay, what's going to be a good spot for me? What's the place that cares about developing their guys, takes care of their players in the G League? So like, I do think there's probably some reciprocal, like long-term value in being a team that is just constantly churning G League to two-way to main roster. Like, that's a very nice and important route for the team to take in terms of attracting talent and in terms of getting guys to go there. You want to be when you're not in a glamour market, you have to build your own advantages. And I think this is a case of one of those things where, like, if you're a G leaguer that puts in his time, you're seeing that there's a good chance, whether you're Zaire Smith on a 10-day, I don't know if that's expired yet, but either way, whether it's Zaire Smith on a 10-day or Pete Nance coming up on a 10-day and then getting a two-way deal, like, hey, if I come here, I play well, I'm a good team player, I'm a good citizen, I'll be rewarded, I'll get a chance to, get a little extra income, and two, like, get a chance. This is a team that's going to look for value on the margin. So on its own, like, this isn't going to lead the A block of Sports Center, but like, ultimately I think it's a good thing.
It definitely will lead the A block of the Chase Down podcast.
And it did.
And when you're talking about, charge graduates and whatnot, our boy, friend of the podcast, Sam Merrill, was loosely connected to one of my favorite moments of All-Star Weekend with Donovan Mitchell in the 3-point contest, wearing the Money Merrill jersey. I enjoyed All-Star Weekend for what it was. It's very much kind of second screen stuff for me, where it's like, oh, it's kind of nice as I'm checking my phone and doing other things, like, to have it on. It's amusing enough. I appreciate it for what it is. I found it very funny that everyone in my life that isn't like a diehard NBA fan but was tuning in was like sending me texts being like, oh, I enjoyed the game, I enjoyed All-Star Saturday. And then you go on Twitter and it's just the polar opposite. But we don't need to get too far into that.
I'm actively choosing not to contribute to the Fix All-Star Weekend discourse. It's fine. It's fine. I loved the shootout. I love Sabrina versus Steph. That was so cool. Such an important moment for basketball, for women's basketball. Not to do the thing, but as a father of a daughter, everyone hates that guy. Everyone hates that guy, but I couldn't help but feel kind of emotional, like that's, my mom played high school basketball in the late 60s, early 70s, when it was just first starting. And now we've got, someone like Sabrina Ionescu, who is, nearly beating the greatest shooter of all time, in a 3-point shootout. So that was amazing. I love the 3-point shootout. Skills competition gave us some mean secondhand, fun when Scotty dribbled off his leg.
And can I just say, for the Fix All-Star Weekend people, the folks that want home court determined by this, cool. I don't want the Cavs losing home court because Scotty's dribbling off his knee.
No,
like, that's not what I'm here for.
No, thank you, sir.
My only real tweak, like, if you wanted to make a format change, I love the format of Rising Stars. It was great to see Amani balling out in that, as well as the Up Next challenge. Getting to see Amani on that stage, that's where that man deserves to be. He just pops every time he's on the screen. But if you're not going to take that format, my one suggestion would be get commentators that seem to enjoy what they're watching, or at least are making an effort to sell it. Because honestly, it's like watching a movie sitting next to the guy from Cinema Sins. Like, if you're sitting next to someone that's nagging and pointing out every little thing for what they perceive to be comedy, I think that hurts the overall product.
While I'm here, I didn't know everyone hated Cinnamon Sin so much. It's just Film Twitter hates that page, and I think it might be in the class. I think Cinema Sins might be in the class of South Park, where like, it might be funny on its own merits, but like a certain type of person watches it, and you just can't trust the general public with handling it responsibly.
Glad you made that point. Because that's honestly, like, that's how I feel about it. Like, I will get a chuckle from
I like Cinema Sense. I just don't let it drive my film aesthetic.
Right. And I will watch it after I've consumed and form my own thoughts on something, right? Like
That's what everyone's
think,
here for, by the way. Our comments on film criticism. Thanks for sticking around, guys.
lights, camera.
It's the All-Star break. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We've toiled. We've done enough. Little commentary here.
Oh, we got to shout out. We got to shout out Donnie before we open up the mailbag. So cool that he wore the Sam Merrill jersey. So freaking cool. Like that is a selfless, low-key act. Didn't make a big show of it. Didn't like tweet out that I was going to be doing it. Like just quietly supported his boy, who he thought deserved to be there. I loved it. I thought it was one of the most likable things a Cavs player has done, like in my life. I was beaming. I was so geeked to see Merrill's name out there. You know, this guy that, you know, we've been rooting for, that only a small percentage of the NBA population still knows about, that just shoots the cover off the ball. Thought it was cool that Donnie shouted out. I think it's a testament to one, Donnie being, you know, as selfless as a star gets with the public eye, and also just being likable, like, and being connected to his team. I thought it was really, really cool. Make fun of me for being a mark or being overly sentimental. I don't care. I loved it.
Dude, that's what we're here for. We're here for things that make us feel things as fans, and like it's one of the most endearing things he's done in a Cavs jersey. And the way that Donovan Mitchell, I know I've talked about this before because we like to celebrate when we're right here. I think it's also important to highlight when we're wrong. I was skeptical about the Mitchell trade. I wasn't the biggest fan of his game prior to coming over, and he has continued to win me over, both with how he acts on and off the court, the growth that he's shown since he's been in a Cavs jersey. But it's little stuff like this that you end up remembering more than the individual games and whatnot. Like this is the type of culture stuff that you really look back fondly. So to kind of have that on the All-Star stage, I thought was really, really special. But we need to kick off the home stretch. Honestly, big shout out to our listeners. We really do appreciate you guys getting these questions in. I think a lot of great questions.
Damn, we have a lot of questions. I just opened up the rundown for the first time because I'm a bad professional.
Yeah, you know what? I'm here to prepare for you. I'm here to throw those lobs for you, Carter. A lot of great questions. Big thanks to everyone that sent them in on Twitter as well as our Discord. A reminder, when it comes to Discord, all you got to do is send a screenshot of a review or a rating to chasedownpod@gmail.com, and we will send you an invite to that. So big thanks to our entire Chase Down community. We will kick things off. Some of these questions I've kind of combined or at least made note when it was the spirit of the same question. But Bald Man Gets Paid as well as Dollar Dog Nick.
Good name, Bald Man Gets Paid.
It's pretty good. Assuming the Cavs finish second, what would your best and worst case scenario for the way the rest of the seedings shake out be?
All right, I think we'll just talk through Cavs matchups because I would imagine that's kind of the spirit of the question. I think the dream. I don't care how. I think if you say anything other than wanting, you know, the Magic, or you know, the Bulls have no shot at getting up to the 7 seed, do they? They're 4 games back, the Magic and 8. I think if you say anyone other than the Magic, I just think you're missing the forest for the trees. You know, yeah, the Heat are vulnerable and weird, but they're still the Miami Heat, led by the best coach in the league, led by a player who is capable of being the best player in any series against any team. I think for me, I want to see a team that hasn't had their first dip into the playoff pool to kind of warm up, but I also think the Magic are a really good starter series. You know, I think about some of those late stage Pacers teams in the Paul George era where they were a 7 or 8 seed, but like you had to go fight against Paul George. They were going to be well coached. They were going to work really hard. You had to go win. And like, I feel like that would be the case against a Magic team, are physical, strong, elite defenders that would really test your playoff offense, but not require you to be in fifth gear right away. So I really like that, both for a winnable matchup and a matchup that would kind of get you ready for whatever comes next. And then I gotta say, man, I hope the Knicks get up to the 3 seed. I still think the Bucks are a scary proposition, as weird as they have been, because Giannis is the best player or the second best player in the world right now. I mean, he's amazing. And I just don't want to deal with that if I can avoid it. You know, if I can have Joel Embiid and or you know, and Giannis go play the Bucks in the second round, that's awesome to me. Like, get them out of the way. And frankly, I just want another shot at the Knicks, man. Like, if we do get to the second round and get to play them, I feel like it would be one of those cathartic series, because I still don't think the Knicks were as talented as the Cavs last year. I think the Cavs played a bad series in a matchup that exploited them in very bad ways. It was the perfect storm. I want to see them prove that their personnel is ready. I want to see them prove that their roster construction is more versatile. And you know, the Knicks are better, which is scary. You know, OG scares me a little bit. He's the best guy guarding Donnie in the league, but that's what I want. And then obviously, you know, from there, you just got the big daddy of the East awaiting if you can get through those first two rounds of the gauntlet. But that's my preferred path. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Orlando is the answer when you talk about first round. Although they have size, there's also the factor that we ran into, right, which is inexperience. What did we say all last season? We said at some point the Cavs are going to, you know, get embarrassed in the playoffs and have things fall apart because of the lack of experience. It happens to every single young team. As much as I like Paolo, I think we'd probably have, you know, probably the best two players in the series, potentially three, or like we have guys talented enough to outplay Paolo in the series.
And you have the personnel to guard him in your base lineups, which really matters.
And they don't have a lot of three-point shooting. They don't have guards that can really kind of pressure the Cavs' point of attack defense. It's just the most favorable matchup. The scariest first-round matchup is obviously Philadelphia if they were to fall that far. Miami Heat, I don't fear Miami the way that I probably should.
Who do you fear more, the Heat or the Pacers?
I think the Pacers.
I fear the Heat more. I would be more nervous about them.
I think Halliburton's a better player at this point than Jimmy Butler. I know that's disrespectful, but Jimmy I just don't know if he's able to sustain for as long of a period of time. And obviously inexperience is a factor there. But when I look at the top two of Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Halliburton, the shooting that they have, I think I fear Indy just a little bit more. And Rick Carlisle's a fantastic coach too. So like, it's not like you have a first-time head coach versus Eric Spoelstra in that equation. But I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much stock in the regular season, but I think I would rather play Miami than Indiana.
They're playing a lot of guys who are untested in the playoffs. That is the one thing I'll say. You know, them and they got worse at the deadline. They're one of the only good teams that got worse at the deadline on purpose when they traded Buddy Hield, who is an imperfect player, but ultimately the kind of guy who really contributed to their personality. It frankly, in my opinion, caused very Cavs specific problems. And like ultimately, I just think the Pacers are fun and good and exciting, but they're at a tier from an experience and talent level perspective where even if they cause you problems, you just got to go beat them. You have to beat them if this is year 2 in the playoffs for your young, talented, fun team that has aspirations for big things. And if you can't, well, then you learn something about yourself. Whereas the Heat, I just think can beat anyone. And like, you might just go, damn, maybe the takeaway will be that you weren't good enough. But like, I think deep down you'll never know because the Heat are so weird. I just want good intel, man. That's all I want.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And honestly, this ties into a question a little further down the rundown from our buddy Zach Weiss at Across the Cavs. But I think it's a good time to jump into it, which is, what's your single biggest concern for the Cavs against Boston, Milwaukee, and New York in a series? So I
love this question, by the way.
Yeah, let's go, matchup by matchup. Let's start in the order that he's presented them. Boston, what's your single biggest concern for the Cavs in a series against the Celtics?
My biggest concern is that our point of attack won't hold up against Boston. I worry that we'll get into help and we'll get that we might have to downshift, then get one of our bigs out on a switch, and then Porzingis will do that infuriating thing he does on this team where he just sort of ambles towards the hoop and gets a wide open 6-footer because it's just like, he catches the ball and there's a dude a foot shorter than him on his hip and he just kind of floats it up. I think that's my concern. I think that this team is gettable. I think our offense is built to do well against their great point of attack defending guards. I think Drew's lost a step, and speedy, shifty guys mess with him more than they used to. And then I think their bigs, we can mess up a drop coverage right now. We're really good against drop this season in a way we weren't last year. So, but I worry about getting enough stops. Because if the Celtics don't get baited into their worst instincts, which is just chucking a billion threes, that amble to the hoop is always going to be there for Zinger. What about you?
Yeah, I think it does come down to Porzingis for me. When you talk about what type of matchups give the Cavs troubles, stretch bigs do concern me. No, not because Evan Mobley and Jared Allen aren't good at defending the perimeter. I think among big men, they are as good as they come, really. I just think it changes the shape of our defense. And even though the Cavs had the best defense in the playoffs last season, I think they lost some of their structural integrity defensively, kind of overcompensating. And I worry that a similar thing could happen where, Jared Allen is pulled a little too far from the rim, and that's leading to breakdowns in other areas. I think the Cavs would still, for a series, have a good defensive rating, but I think it could wear out the team and get them out of their game in a way that a lot of other teams can't, just because Boston's so talented. That starting five is probably the best lineup in basketball. That is the best 5-man group from a talent standpoint that there is. I don't worry a ton about the point of attack in terms of Garland and Mitchell, just because I don't think Derek White or Drew Holiday are those type of guys that can kind of beat you like a Damian Lillard or Jalen Brunson. But I just think there's enough front court concerns and they present enough issues there that gives me the biggest reason for pause. I would probably Boston would be favored in that series. I think if you're making a pick, I think the Cavs could upset the Celtics, but I want that to be as far as possible. I want that to be as far down the road as possible, because hopefully the Cavs learn some things, in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. If you're the 2 seed, you're going to avoid the Celtics.
Boston is having one of the most underrated seasons in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
They are destroying everybody. They are plus 10.1. The next best average differential is plus 7.3.
Mm-hmm.
They are insane at home. They have and despite having the best home record by a healthy margin, they also are just 1 game away from the best road record. They're insane, man. They're so good. They've avoided the injury bug. But the stuff that I was worried about them, and by the way, it's so hard not to, we're going to go so long on this or leave a bunch of questions on the cutting room floor. But
honestly, we got no games to talk about. It's an earlier podcast. We're going long on this podcast. It is what it is.
But you look the thing I was so wrong about was I thought they had 6 guys who were, any good basically. And then a bunch of kind of chaff, the quote unquote chaff has stepped up in a really major way. Peyton Pritchard is playing out of his mind. Sam Hauser can't miss. They are getting enough. They made a nice deadline trade for Xavier Tillman, who's a really nice rotational big. They don't have the, I thought they were a team that didn't have a lot of pumpkin insurance. They still might not if the top guys aren't playing well, but they can cobble together great lineups with 8 guys in the rotation. That's really all you need in the postseason. So they're nasty, and I don't want to touch them. We should probably move on though to the next team. How about the Bucks?
The one thing that we do have in our favor is that, you know, Tristan Thompson will be back by that point, and Al Horford plays for that team, and historically that has always been a very good thing. I'm going to start with what I fear most with a Knicks matchup.
Okay.
And that is themselves. I fear how the Cavs match up in that series, and this is drawing on being on the other side of some of these matchups in the past. Like, I think back to 2018 where the Cavs needed, you know, a LeBron game winner and a throwback Tristan game just to beat the Pacers in 7. They survived by the skin of their teeth, game 7 against the Celtics. And then that middle series against Toronto, where Toronto was probably a better team. And yes, they exploited matchups against DeRozan and Jonas Valanciunas defensively. But I think Toronto got into their own heads in that matchup, and they got away from their own game. I think, you know, if Jonas puts in one of those putbacks at the beginning of game 1, it could have been a totally different series. And that reminds me a lot of Josh Hart making that game winner against the Cavs in game 1 last year against the Knicks. Like, if the Cavs survive that game, you know, there's less of an overreaction. They probably feel a little more confident. It could have changed the complexion of that series. And I just worry that, you know, some of the good habits that we built up this year could go away if you're going up against a team that, you know, you've heard the Cavs talk about what that matchup means to them, how frustrated they are, how that has fueled what they've done this season. I just think there's, you know, that potential for trying to do a little bit too much to prove yourself, to silence the doubters and getting away from their game. Because I think if the Cavs are playing their game and they stick to their identity that they formed, I feel really good about their chances in any series. Like, I feel good about their chances giving Boston a very competitive series. I think they can beat any team in the Eastern Conference in a series. What we're going to need to learn over this stretch run of the season and in these playoffs is, can they stick to this identity and build upon what they've already built? Or when things get tight, do they revert to some of their old habits?
That's all well and fair. I'm going to go with a bit more of an X's and O question or answer on this one, which is, I'm a little worried about who they're going to guard Jalen Brunson with if they trim up their rotation a little bit. I thought Okoro was so good on him, and I worry about what our offense has to do in order to match what'll happen if Max Strus is getting a lot of primary reps on him, or Darius is getting primary reps on him, as compared to Karras and Okoro. You know, they're just playing their lineups. Their starting lineup right now, I think, a big bellwether that I'm keeping an eye on is their point of attack defense. I felt like they were asking early in the year, they were asking Mobley and Allen to clean up a lot more than they did last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I am curious to see how much JB will trust a guy like Okoro to give him heavy minutes in a playoff series, because we have not seen it yet. Now, we've only had one playoff series, but even in the play-in games, Ice pretty much got pulled out of the rotation 2 years ago. So, like, I worry about that, because I think I don't want them to backslide on defense, because I really think their defensive output was amazing in that series. I just think they needed to score better. They needed to shoot better. And so their ability to contain that while kind of still building in the stuff that they've added is going to be a really interesting back and forth.
So I resisted my urge to cut you off because I'm awful for that.
Thank you, buddy.
May I ask?
Yeah.
Why did Donovan Mitchell's name not come up when it came to defending Jalen Brunson? Because in my opinion,
because I don't think he's a good defender on Jalen Brunson.
I think he's played very good defense this year. I think he has legitimately improved. And when you're looking at what happened last year, where I think both you and I both wanted more Isaac Okoro in that series. Obviously, he wasn't healthy going into it, missed a month. Everyone knows the context. But even without Isaac Okoro really being a presence in that series and bothering Jalen Brunson, which I think if we have a rematch and he's healthy, he's going to spend a lot of time on him. And I think that's something that you want for the Cavs. But even with that, Jalen Brunson did not have an efficient series. The Cavs still have the best defense in the playoffs. Why is that in particular? Because the Knicks, I think the addition of Bojan is going to ungunk their offense in some ways. Like I think
I will be thrilled with every Bojan minute in this series.
I just think they have lost some play creation, like guys that can put the ball on the floor. Alec Burks and Dante DiVincenzo are going to be those other guys for them. And that just doesn't give me the same kind of concerns that we have with some of the ball handling they had last year in comparison. Like, even though Emmanuel quickly didn't have a great series, like RJ Barrett had a very good series and is a big physical body. Those guys aren't really that when it comes to physicality. So I'm just surprised that is your answer, just from a schematic standpoint.
It's just a quiet angst. And to speak to the Donovan thing, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's very possible that I'm just wrong on this, but my eyes tell me that Donovan does a really nice job against straight line drivers. I really like him guarding up against a Jaylen Brown. Guys who are not so herky-jerky in nature. I think a guy like Jalen Brunson has done a really nice job of using Donovan's athleticism against him.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were plays both in that series and in the game where Brunson scored like 50 or whatever it was against us, where I felt like Donovan was chasing ghosts, big lunges as Brunson's going the other way. I feel like the straight line drivers who are even bigger than Donovan or stronger, I think his athleticism is better leveraged in those spots, and his low center of gravity and stuff. I think he's great. I think he's become legitimately great closing out on shooters and things like that. I just feel like Brunson's specific play style does not suit Donovan's best strengths as a defender. As happy as I am with his defense this year, again, okay, I might just be wrong, but that is where I come down on it. Should we move on to the next team?
Yeah, Milwaukee Bucks. I think once again drawing on experiences of playoffs past, best player ends up mattering a lot. And Giannis, I think, in a more definitive way than Jason Tatum or even Joel Embiid, who, they've got some playoff questions too. I think Giannis as an NBA champion and as one of the best players in the world and someone that can be the best player in the world on any given night, that's my biggest concern. Like, I just think he can change the shape of a series. You can get early Mobley foul trouble and it just throws everything out of whack. Like, it's Giannis. Like, it's reductive, but sometimes basketball can be that way.
How many guys in the NBA right now can be the best player in a series and still have their team lose? Like, it's maybe like 4 or 5 guys, like that consistently can be like, yeah, they lost, but that guy was nuts. That whole series. And Giannis kind of has like 3 or 4 of those series to his name. I know Luka has a couple series to his name like that, where it's like, they lost, but it is not on that guy at all. Like that. Normally, like if you lose, you look at like the Celtics as an example. Like normally, like if they lose, you can go look at the Basketball Reference game logs, and Jason Tatum probably had 3 stinkers in there. Like, right. Even Giannis's stinkers are like 34 and 16. Like, he just happened to not be super efficient from the field, or he missed a bunch of free throws. I just think his floor is so freaking high. So yeah, I think that is probably where I'm at, where it's Giannis, maybe somewhat secondarily. They just are very big in the front court. But like, I don't know. I just think our offense is so much better built for that this year. They're so much better against drop than they were in years past. So that is, I think everything's so weird with Milwaukee right now. Saying anything other than just Giannis feels wrong.
Yeah, they're going to be a team that's going to be figuring out an identity. So, when you're looking at kind of individual matchups and, this is like an interesting clash of styles, we don't really know what their style is going to be. All we really know is like, when we did play them, it didn't feel as imposing as it has in the past. And that's
Jared Allen beating the absolute
weird
crap out of Brooke Lopez in every matchup certainly helps with that.
It definitely inspires a little bit of confidence, and their point of attack defense is quite a bit different. David Levy asks, the Cavs were notoriously slow last year. What has the pace been before the Garland and Mobley injuries, with them gone, and since they've been back? So as a point of reference, last year, the pace was 96.27. Pre-injuries this year, it was 99.07. So, up 3 possessions for a game. In that stretch, without Garland and Mobley, they actually slowed down about almost a full possession to 98.26. And since their return, they've gone even slower at 97.8. But I did want to point this out because I find it incredibly interesting. When you look at the starting five's pace of Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, and Allen, they actually have a pace of 100.9, so almost 101. They are faster than the team's average. They are one of the Cavs' quickest lineups. They would be, I believe, 8th in terms of pace. And even individually, like when you look at the pace for a player when they're on the court, Mobley has played, the Cavs have played at this pace with each of these players on the floor. Mobley 101, Donnie 100.17 or 100.18, DG 100.17, and Allen 100. So my conclusion here is if the starting unit is playing so quick and these guys individually are playing so quick when they're on the court, the reason we've seen a drop off in the no Garland and Mobley stretch and the stretch since their return is because they have blown teams out, and all of a sudden you got bench guys playing, these all bench lineups playing at a totally different pace, running out the shot clock with 45 seconds because they're up 35 points, little things like that that can throw some noise into the sample. But I do find it interesting that as a starting unit, understanding that the spacing isn't as great with two bigs, they have been playing a whole lot faster than any other Cavs lineup.
First off, thank you for doing that research. Very, very good. I think it is a couple things to note. Thing one, the difference between, being the 20, let's see here. Let's just take a little sample. The difference between the 23rd fast team and the 9th fast team is about 2 possessions. So this is one of those things where I think the ranking, I think I am at the point of my life where I'm not going to care. I'm not going to care where they rank and pace unless they're dead last or they're first. If they're in the middle, they're probably pretty close to 12 other teams. I think it is also worth noting that of the 10 fastest teams in the league right now, it used to be pace really correlated to great offense. It's not necessarily the case right now, or great teams. It was, you could kind of tell who was playing the right way by who was playing faster. You got Washington is first in the league in pace by a healthy margin. You have Detroit at 7. You have Atlanta at 3, though their offense is pretty darn good. The Lakers, who have a pretty moribund offense, they're 6th. So it's one of those things where I'm not as worried about the number right now. I am actually much more worried about what I'm seeing. And what I am most interested in now, Justin, and I'm never going to track this because I'm a bad professional that doesn't take good enough notes. The thing I'm most interested in is, what does the shot clock say when I see the first action run? When I see that first screen? When I see that first sprint? And more often than not, I'm seeing it at set 18 or 17. And the thing that drove us crazy last year was 10 seconds being run off the clock. We were at 14, 13, 12 before the first set started. And you look at expected point values per possession as you go down in the shot clock, and it just collapses. The Cavs were shooting themselves in the foot for no reason whatsoever. They have stopped doing that. So as long as they continue to stop doing that, which is a horrible sentence, I will be happy.
Yeah. They have been playing with a much better pace and a speed that's, everything makes more sense. I think still that is going to be something that I watch. in matchups against better teams, especially late in games. Not killing the clock. That's one of the things we loved about their win over the Sacramento Kings, where, oh my God, we're playing against such a great offense. Like, we're up. Should we nurse this lead? No, they continue to get into their sets and continue to make life easier for themselves in the half court. So that to me, like, when you look at kind of trends for the home stretch of the season, that's going to be one of the things that I'm really keeping my eye on, because I think when we talked about this in the past, like, I think the responsibility comes down to Garland and Mitchell more than anybody else. And for Garland, sometimes he slows down, particularly in the fourth quarter. That's a habit he needs to break. I think for Donovan, sometimes it's, all right, I'm slowing the clock down and I'm going ISO. Nobody else is really moving on this possession. Both of them have been able to generate such great success for themselves and the team as well by doing that. But it just understanding that in order to get that to translate to the playoffs, they got to break those habits that they have. I think that's one of the things that I'm really keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and a couple things to add to that, which all awesome points as usual. A couple other things. This team has a penchant for letting perfect be the enemy of good. Getting into your offense fast allows you more grace to do that. You can pass up an okay look after the first action and attack a closeout to try to go find a wide open shot if that first action is happening with 17 on the clock. So, like, I just think you unlock so much when you go faster. And I think they're doing that. So ultimately, really, really happy. I actually forgot the second thing I was going to say because I'm scatterbrained. Sorry.
That's okay. I think the main takeaway is that pace in the half court is the foundation for better offense. Zoom is the foundation for better podcasting. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Carter, you can go. I wasn't going to let you take my segue.
I got so excited that I remembered what I was going to say. It's that I didn't even notice you were setting up a segue. Normally, I see it from a mile away. It's that it also, playing with pace actually is the number one thing that will keep a too big lineup that doesn't have shooters, giving them options, giving them choices, giving them that time and opportunity to find a high percentage look. Like, I feel like that's why I'm so pleased. I know we haven't seen the great results with the starting five offensively yet. I just think it's coming because of that, because they're playing fast and giving themselves every opportunity to get good looks.
Yeah, and it ties into a question that Wes from Ohio asked, which is the offense moves at a different pace when DG brings it up. Sometimes they get into actions quicker when Mitchell is running the point. This was evident in the fourth quarter against the Bulls. Should DG play with more pace, or does that style of not really lend to his strengths as a point guard? I think, again, the most important thing is, when is he initiating in the shot clock? We touched on it before, but I think that's one of the biggest areas for growth. I really don't like that I can't kind of look at individual pace, filter out Donovan Mitchell on cleaning the glass.
Bring back NBA Wowie. What a website that was.
Yeah, a little bit more difficult, but I did want to pull some of the transition frequency. Garland and Mitchell on the court together, they actually get out in transition 19.4%, which is in the 99th percentile. They really get out and run when the two guards are together. Just Garland, it's down to the 20th percentile, 13.6. And just Donnie is 16.8, which is the 86th percentile. So about a 3% jump when those two guards are together. And
that's the difference between 66 percentile points, that 3% jump.
Yeah, it's a massive, massive jump. But like, I think, again, so many of the numbers, whether it's pace, whether it's offense, whether it's defense, despite that being counterintuitive, the team numbers all go in the right direction when the two guards are together, and their own individual efficiency always improves when the two guards are together. So I think that's something that I want to see Garland continue. I thought it was actually interesting, like when you look at it prior to the injury, they played at a higher pace with Garland on the court than when Mitchell was on his own. When their overall pace, he was playing with a lot more tempo this year, and that was one of the things I really liked about his game.
Sounds like he might need to get his wind back, Justin.
That might be part of it, but I think, again, it is still one of those habits, and I just think he does such a good job of generating really efficient looks, particularly in the half court. He's done a terrific job spraying it out to three. Him getting earlier in the shot clock is just going to make his life easier, because I think when you look at some of their late game failings last year, despite being the best fourth quarter team in the league, a lot of their late game failings came on the road rather than home, because they were great in the clutch at home, but on the road, they would let that shot clock wind down. They would try to protect leads, and they would get jammed up. Whether it's a trap on one of the guards. I just think that, getting into offense earlier in the shot clock, setting screens higher up on the court if you know the team has a tendency to trap in those situations, those are the type of things that I'm really keeping an eye on, because even though Garland, I don't want him to play at a Steve Nash, Tyrese Halliburton type pace, because he's so good at actually setting up and getting everybody involved. I do think how soon he initiates into the shot clock is the most important thing.
Yeah, same. I feel like I'm probably just kind of echoing my general answer here. I think that he's playing fast enough. I do think there is a degree of you're seeing him figure out how to play his rhythmic game and align that with the time signature the rest of the Cavs are playing on, Mm-hmm. But since his return. But I think that's more evidence of him being a good teammate and a good learner than anything. I feel like he's trying to figure out how, it's like two sets of drums, one playing, a faster rhythm, another one playing a slower rhythm, but they're both on the same time signature. I'm fine with that as long as they're on the same time signature, right? You just can't have them be discordant. And DG at his worst since he's returned, in that Spurs game, kind of felt like he was playing at a different rhythm than the rest of the team. But I think the fact that you're watching him kind of figure it out, once he gets kind of into the flow of it, he is an elite rhythm player. So mm-hmm. I'm very hopeful that stuff, you're just not going to feel that soon.
Yeah, I am as well. Billy and Hunter both asked very similar questions, so I'll ask them both at the same time. Do you think there should be some thought given to benching Max and starting Okoro? And Hunter's question was, would the Cavs start Okoro and bring Max off the bench since Max is in a slump? I just think that his perimeter defense is too valuable, especially with Garland on the floor. Your thoughts, Carter?
No, I don't think they will do that, especially not in the regular season. I think the worst thing you can do with a slumping shooter is bench him. You have to let him just keep shooting. That's part of the job. It's part of what goes on, and it's part of signing a guy like Max Strus, who is a streaky shooter. Plus, he's still kind of the plus-minus king of the team. He's still doing everything you need him to do. They perform at a very, very high level with him out there. I do think it's worth asking, how sure are we that the Cavs starting lineup is set no matter who they are playing in the postseason?
I think starting lineup is
it matchup proof?
I think from a starting lineup standpoint, yes. Particularly because the lineup data has been so good. I think there is the potential for Isaac Okoro to be our Andre Iguodala, which is funny because that was one of his draft comps. And when you look at it, he is taking more threes per game than Warriors Iggy, and he's shooting them at a higher percentage.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's just one of those
basketball,
things,
man.
But Harrison Barnes would start because of the value that his spacing brought. And I think Max Strus, brings the playmaking. He's got the chemistry with Mobley. Those lineups have been so good. I do think that there's the potential for Isaac Okoro to close games for the Cavs, particularly in the playoffs. I think there's even the potential that you go one big and have Max Strus and Isaac Okoro out there as kind of partners in the front court along with the two guards. I think there's a lot of options and levers for JB to pull. And we saw earlier in the year that the Strus, Okoro, Mobley front court is very effective. Like, it's a good two-way lineup, and Okoro, you can play that screen setting four type of role. If you're looking forward to like one of those matchups against the Knicks, if that were to occur, if OG Anunoby's playing down at power forward, that might be something that they go to, you know, cross match, because, okay, we feel good about Garland and Mitchell on Burks and DiVincenzo. We can put Okoro on Brunson. Strus can guard OG. He's not really someone that can put the ball on the floor. And we have one of our bigs out there. Like, I think there's a lot of options you can go to, but I just love, it is funny. Like, you look back on that Knicks series and you know, the hell that guys like Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade got. So the fact that we're having these type of conversations, I think, speaks to a healthy Cavs ecosystem overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team is just crazy deep, and that's why you have to have that discussion. I actually do think the starting lineup could be fungible and a little bit more swap-outable. I don't think any of the core four guys would get benched in a series. Maybe if you got all the... That feels like a next year thing. Like, you make it all the way like deep into the conference finals, and you have a matchup you just can't shake, so you make a tweak because you have such depth and trust in your 6th, 7th man that you can do that. But I do think that small forward spot could be one of those things where if Max is just ice cold in a series, or Brunson's killing you to start every game, you know, maybe you consider ice. Maybe you're playing the Celtics and Tatum is out there, and you know Dean is really good on Jason Tatum and has proven that he's been really good on Jason Tatum. And you want to be able to leave Evan Mobley to go play free safety and gunk up the rest of the Celtics' actions. Okay, maybe you do that.
So like Channing Frye in for TT.
Yeah, or Richard Jefferson in for Kevin Love, which is like the next step. And I do think it'll be interesting. We're kind of used to the Cavs being like, when they've been a great team, they've been a very top-heavy team. You know, they've been a very reliant on LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love. You know, they were their big three. But even Kevin, like, there were series where they said, Kevin, we need you to sit. You might only play 25, 28 minutes in this one, while LeBron plays 44. You know, and like, it's hard to have our core always plays 40 minutes in a playoff series if it's four dudes. So it is, I think you're right, and it'll be interesting to see whether they will, you know, sit one of the bigs, or hell, sit one of the guards down the stretch of a game if they have a 5-man lineup that's playing really, really well. I think it's more likely that one of the bigs sits than one of the guards, but like, we don't know what the playoffs will bring. But like, the root of this question, I think, was about the regular season. I think it would be very silly to do that, because you need to give this starting lineup reps to find themselves offensively. They're killing it on defense, but offensively, I'm not thrilled with where their numbers are, and I want to give them every opportunity to figure that out as a group, because it's important for the long-term health of the team. We have great 5-man lineup data with other personnel swapped in. I know that you can have good lineups with Darius, Donovan, Isaac, Evan, and Jarrett. We have a whole season's worth of data there. I need more data for the starting lineup we have right now.
Yeah, and you know, part of it was especially, you know, Darius being back in the lineup. And, you know, I understand it in theory. I will keep beating this drum. We have now 3 years in a row where, you know, all the advanced defensive metrics do have Garland as a slight plus. And the important thing, like, I get it on paper that, okay, it's a small backcourt. Are they going to have defensive issues? But it was the best defense in the league last year. It was the best defense in the playoffs.
Even with Karras playing a lot of minutes of the three, who is not Isaac on defense, which I have to remind myself of that.
And the funny thing is, when you look last year, they had a 110.8 defensive rating with the two guards on the court. You add Okoro to the mix, for whatever reason, they were actually worse defensively. It was 112.7.
Noted bad defender, Isaac Okoro.
Right. Obviously, Okoro, Mobley, and Allen, that's going to give you a worse team defense. And obviously, I'm not saying that Okoro actually hurts the defense, but I think it's important to note that, you know, 110.8 defensive rating with the two guards, that's terrific. This year, it's 108.6 with the two guards together, which is in the 95th percentile for all lineups defensively. Like, they work really well defensively together. Donovan Mitchell, I think the biggest change there is Mitchell really committing to the defensive end of the floor this year. I think that is part of the reason why it's improved from elite to even more elite. And you add Okoro to the mix with those two, it goes up to 112. So again, you got a 108.7 with Max Strus, a 112 with Okoro. At some point, like, the results, I wouldn't take off, make an offense for defense sub when the defense is working as well as it is, which I think was a big part of your point. But Justin asks, not me.
Okay.
What's more important to the playoff success, Okoro or Strus, while we're on this subject?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I think the answer is yes. I think both are so important for the different things they bring. I think Okoro's defense is all defense leveled right now. Cavs have no one else on the perimeter like that. Dean is close, but mostly with bigger wings. And obviously Evan and Jared are elite on the interior. But in terms of Isaac's ruined several guards nights that are of the elite variety in the league. So part of me, my gut says him, because if he's shooting well, we punch above our weight. Mm-hmm. If Max is shooting well, we're very, very good, but we're more, we're more what we thought we were, if that makes sense. But like, I don't know, man. It's a tough question, because if Strus is shooting well, like, his shooting well is very different than Isaac shooting well, So I don't know. I don't know.
Shooting well is radioactive. Like, I think it's Max, because I think even when Isaac's shooting well, I don't know. Like, I love him going for 4 of 8 the other game. I just don't know if that volume is going to be there in the playoffs, and I just don't know how much that moves the needle. I think Isaac's floor is just so damn high, and he's so kind of reliable for what he does, that with Max being a swing piece, I think I lean that direction, particularly because we assume that this is going to be the starting lineup. And I think if he's playing well, it makes it almost impossible to deal with what the core is doing. So I think it's going to be Max.
I do think about the way Max unlocks Evan, and we haven't really seen that 2-man game flourish like it was earlier in the year just yet. But I think that might be the differentiator.
Yeah. It's, again, this is one of those good problems to have. The way that these guys have emerged, and as a long-standing member of Okoro Island, this has been a very satisfying season for me. Mark's Price asks, what trends should fans be looking for as the team? Why are you laughing, Carter?
That username.
Just to be clear, it was Karl Marx X, not Mark Price. I wasn't just saying that weird. What trends?
Oh, I knew exactly what it was. That's why I'm laughing.
I'm just saying for the listeners, sometimes I pronounce things weird. I can't talk properly, so I wanted to make that clear why you were laughing. What trends should we as fans be looking for in the team as they enter the last few months of the season? What positive indicators, other than winning or losing, would best demonstrate that this is a team that is ready to try for a deep playoff run? Carter.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. I want to see the starting lineup kill people. Right now, they're solid. They have, I think, elite lineups with Donovan and Jarrett and role players. I think they have elite lineups with Darius and Evan and role players. And right now, they have a good lineup with all 4 of those guys and Max Strus. I think it should be an elite lineup. It should be one of those lineups where you sort by 5-man advanced net rating and go, damn, they're that high? They're like, that's the 4th best lineup in the league? That's the ceiling, I think, of our starting lineup, if things play as well as I think they should. There's no world in which their offensive rating should be 5 or 6 points lower than it was with Isaac Okoro last year at small forward. So I am more confident than I have ever been in this team's ability to roll out lineups that are no worse than B plus. My biggest concern remains, do any of those lineups face up to another team's A plus lineup? And I think we have that A plus lineup, but we have not seen the metrics bear it out yet. I think the shooting variance has just inherently dragged those down because Max isn't hitting and Darius isn't hitting. But I think they can and they will, and I need to see it. I need to see this team's... I feel like last year this team had an amazing fastball and didn't have a lot of pitch variety. I kind of feel the inverse right now, where this team has a ton of great pitches, but they don't have that one killer lineup that just makes that you go, all right, it's close with 4 minutes left. It's curtains, man. Like that, the Cavs have had that in the past, where if it was close, you knew the game was over because their best was going to be better than the other team's best. I just haven't seen it yet. I really believe it's there. I just haven't seen it.
I'm going to yes and here because I agree with everything you said. I think what I'm going to be looking at is more on the individual level. Like when we talk about, breaking those habits, if we play a good team, if you're in adverse situations, is Donovan sticking to team basketball? Is Darius playing with pace? If bigs are in drop, are Mobley and Allen attacking that and being assertive? Like I want to see them continue to build positive habits and get those reps in there to lay the foundation for that playoff success. That's the type of stuff that I'm really looking forward to, because like, to me, before the All-Star break, there's a lot of trends. There's a lot of things you can look at with the team. But when you talk about like our concerns going into that Knicks series, it was a post All-Star break. Kevin Love wasn't playing, and all of a sudden our defensive rebound rate has changed. Like, it's going to be this sample that we look at. That's the filter that we're going to be looking at and saying, here's our trends heading into the playoffs. This is where we're strong. This is where we're vulnerable. Because all the context of earlier in the season, all the lineup weirdness, this is going to be who you are heading into the playoffs. Whether that means somebody's a little banged up and things are a little wonky, like, you just have to go with who you have. So I'm more interested on the individual level of, are we building positive habits? Are we stacking successes and putting ourselves in the best position to have playoff success?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And ultimately, you just need to see them prove that they believe in what they're building. Because if not, then you have big questions to answer.
Yeah. Tony asked this question before we get to close out the podcast with the Darius portion of this, because we got quite a few Darius questions. What opposing team play style has you the most worried? Example, double big, grit and grind, 5 out with shooters. For me, it's stretch big. I answered that a little earlier in the podcast, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say, Carter.
Opposing playstyle that has me the most worried. It's a good question. I don't know. Again, I think this kind of goes back to my last answer, and it's maybe not a sexy answer, but I think it's like, I just want to see. I'm worried that, again, whoever we're playing at that, as we get deeper into the postseason, that their A game will be better than our A game. Like, I think we can hang over 48 minutes really well, but like, when we're that 4 minutes left, like, are the Celtics just going to bury us in threes? Are the Heat just going to grind out possessions and outgrind us? Like, I just haven't seen this team's 102 mile per hour fastball, And I'm sorry to answer the same thing as I answered in the last one, but I think it's the same answer. I think it's yes, all of them. I just want to. I think we can hang with any style. I think our optionality is better than we've ever had, maybe since I've been a Cavs fan. So because like, even those LeBron teams, there would be teams who would present matchup problems, but we just talent through them.
Yeah,
and I think
we had a hell of a fastball.
We had one of the fastest fastballs in the history of fastballs. We don't have that now.
Yeah,
I really do think our fastball was really great last year. I just want to see them. We got some Tommy John in the offseason. We've been rediscovering our strength. I want to see it.
I can't wait to rediscover the strength of my ankle. Moving on to Darius. Colin asked from our Discord, who do the Cavs most need DG to play like, and why is Mike Conley? Carter, I'll let you go first.
Oh, I think they need him to play like Steve Nash. Because I've always loved that comp. I've always felt that Darius at his very best was very Nashian. I just think like Mike Conley is aiming a little low. I think that's like, if you are of the opinion that this team is so freaking good that you need someone not to mess up and play mistake-free fundamental basketball, then I think Mike Conley is a very good comp. And Mike Conley is an awesome player, don't get me wrong. I think that when tested, just like in that Knicks series, you're gonna go, we need a little more juice. We need a little more oomph. We need someone to push on the accelerator, not just keep us on the road.
Yeah.
And so I will always go to Nash as my ideal Darius because one, I'm an enormous fan of what Steve Nash was as a player, and I'm an enormous fan of what I think Darius can be.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Steve Nash. Shocking. I know the Canadian. I'm not going to answer Steve Nash. Like, my answer is Darius. Like,
great answer. Probably a better answer.
He needs to play like Darius Garland. And honestly, I think the best version of this team is Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell dueling banjos, both of them as assertive as humanly possible. I think what you want to see is what we've seen developing with the bigs, where, Jared Allen is able to provide some of the short role playmaking, and he can be a hub, and Mobley can be a hub. You want to have that same thing with your guards. Donovan Mitchell's growth, I don't think enough can be said about how good he's become as a playmaker and as a primary ball handler at times. That was one of his biggest strengths. We talked about it at the start of the year of how ineffective the Cavs were with Garland off the court, and how that was a trend going back to Utah of anytime he was playing without a point guard, those lineups didn't work. He improved. And
we're finally past that. Can I interrupt real quick? Can I tangent real quick? It's crazy, man. Donovan Mitchell went his whole career being a guy where you look at the on-off numbers and you go, those kind of underwhelm the base box score stats. You go, maybe the impact isn't there. I feel like it's the most under-discussed story among the best players in the league by a mile that Donovan has one of the best on-off differentials in the entire NBA. Yep. It's so cool. It is reflective of what I'm seeing on the floor. It's reflective of his growth, of the Cavs' growth of putting a roster that's a little better suited to him. And normally guys with like a 14-point swing when they're on or off the floor are no doubters in the MVP conversation.
Yeah.
I understand why no Cav is going to get any, they're going to get graded on a negative curve all year because of how the playoffs ended last year. But it's nuts that this guy is plus 14 on-off swing differential.
Yeah,
it's
nuts,
it's crazy. I feel like I didn't know it was that stark till I saw it tweeted out recently.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, because of how the playoffs went, they're not going to get considered for those awards. Just like, Joel Embiid isn't able to win MVP because they always flame out in the second round and looks bad. Very consistent with what market they talk about. But I think when you look at the playoffs last year, like when the Cavs had their most success, Garland was being incredibly assertive. Game 2, shooting out of his mind. Game 4, he almost single-handedly got that comeback and won them that game if Evan Mobley didn't get into foul trouble. Like, when he is that assertive, I think it unlocks the defense. We need to see him be, a better version of himself. Contributing on the defensive end, someone that doesn't turn the ball over. When you talk about his usage and assist rate, that's what we need to see. And I want to see him continue to grow off ball when Donovan has the ball. I want to see him when Donovan's off the court. I want to see him assertive and dominating in those minutes. I just think both of them being assertive and figuring out how to get that dueling banjo thing going is going to make the Cavs so much more difficult to guard. And, you know, when you listen to Donovan talk about Darius, that's always what he's talking about. He's like, he's a very talented scorer. I'm trying to get that out of him. We're trying to get him to not always make the right play and go out there and be aggressive. And to me, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see him, you know, manage a game and making mistake-free basketball, because I want to see him pushing the pace, pushing the envelope, because I think that's what takes the Cavs to the next level, is having two guards at that level. And Donovan making the growth, the strides that he has and the improvements as he has as a player at 27 years old, I think that's a really important reminder of where guys are on their growth curve when you talk about 22-year-old Evan Mobley and Darius, who just turned 24, and Isaac, who just turned 23. Even Jared Allen, people talked about him as a finished product 3 years ago, and he has made steady improvements every single year. So to me, I don't want to see any, like, I'm not afraid of seeing the players that I root for and my guys on this team make mistakes. What I care most about is progress. Even if there's little steps back, I want to see them trending in the right direction, because as long as there is macro progress, I feel great about the future and direction of this team.
Yeah, the progress just has to outpace everyone else's progress. That's the one caveat I'll add is, you know, the entirety of basketball is just, from a talent level, is on a perpetual upward arc. You know, so like, you can't just get a little better. You have to get better faster than everyone else is getting better.
Yeah.
But I believe in this group's ability to do that. You know, again, I talked about it on a couple pods ago. This is one of the only teams in the NBA that pretty much, like, I think Okoro is the only guy who's not locked up for next year.
That's insane.
Very, of their rotation at least. And that's very, very, very rare. You know, normally you're seeing 20-30% of a team swapping out year after year.
The only guys are restricted free agent. The only guys are restricted free agent, and you have a mid-level exception, and you have a first-round pick. Like, that's a hell of a position to be in.
Nuts.
Man, we've gone long on this, and honestly, I think, like, we've answered a lot of the kind of DG questions with that answer. Like, I want to see progress. I want to see him improve. I think the narratives have shifted a little too much. Like, we've seen it bounce around. It was Jared Allen. It was Dean Wade. It was Isaac Okoro coming out of the playoffs. Early in the year, Donovan got far too much shit from fans. And I think some of that has to do with, you know, emotionally distancing because of media narratives and whatnot. Like, that's a hard thing for even me as a fan to fight at times, right? And then Garland and Mobley are out, and Mobley got a lot of hell. Right now it's Garland's turn, but I think the patience that we preached with every single one of these guys, whether it's Allen, whether it's Okoro, whether it's Mobley, trust the larger sample sizes. Guys will get back to that. And when you talk about guys that are as committed as they are, that work as hard as they do, I feel good about them getting back to who they are and who they've been, and then building upon that. And tune out the noise. Tune out the noise, because the noise is silly.
Well, and it's also like, guys are gonna have stretches where they're not playing well. And like, it's been a really hard year for Darius. You know, he's just been, I mean, how many games
There's been insanely valid reasons.
out of the 29 games he's played, how many games has he been quote unquote right? You know, like, not that many. And, you know, sometimes you just have weird bad years like that, and maybe the year just never gets fully in rhythm for him. You know, it's possible. But like, the reality is, I'm thrilled that Darius is working through his rhythm and getting right and getting back to the Darius we know, while the team's 18-2 in their last 20. You know, like, normally when your best 2 or 3 guys are having a rough time, that's reflected in the standings.
Yeah.
And like, the fact that it's not just shows how freaking good this team is. Because I don't. Here's a question for you, buddy. A mailbag question from me to end out the night. If 0 is the Cavs didn't play at all to their potential, and 100 is the Cavs are playing to the ceiling of their potential as a team, what do you think the number the highest number the Cavs have gotten to this year?
That's very hard because I would say on the aggregate it's been like 78.
The highest peaks they have reached.
The highest peaks still feel like low to mid 80s.
I was going to go 84, 85, somewhere in there, which means there's a cool 15% of undiscovered ceiling, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, like Mitchell and Allen being the ones that made leaps this year. I think like those are the hardest. Like when you talk about most improved, it usually is whoever was scoring 9 and jumped up to 20. Those little subtle leaps in the margins can be the hardest to accomplish. So the fact that they have kind of knocked those off and there's just so much room, like even just Mobley and Garland getting back to who they've been would level up this team so much. And I think with Mobley's 3-point shooting, with some of the pace, and if Garland can get the volume up on his threes and whatnot, I think there's so much untapped potential there that there's a lot more. I almost feel 84 is too high. So that is how I would answer that question. But
I think 84 isn't too high, but the difference between 84 and 100 is maybe the difference between like 40 and 84. Like the it's an exponential growth curve.
That is certainly fair. And this is bringing me back to college and my grades that never hit 84. But big thanks to everyone that sent in questions. Really appreciate you guys. If you're watching live on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.